This is the Archer Awakening now, and Willis's World back with it. Yeah, the Archer Awakening is a little more complex to use it alone, because a lot of the skills that are best for it are not quick slottables, so you're going to need to use the keybinds that are with them. And there's a few of them. Now, two of them I was able to quick slot, but the other ones, it's kind of not there, and as you can see down there, that's still there, and the Breath of the Spirit is still there. The Breath of the Spirit you do want to be activating, because it is utilizing Exhale, and the Exhale keeps you in your bow. So, there's no reason not to use it with how powerful of a variable it is. To recount it, it is in your main kit, but the Breath of Spirit is usable with your Great Bow. And it's the HP recovery, the chance to stun, and the attack. Basically, all speeds debuff to the target. You get to choose between one of those three, and that's what your Exhale does. But the only other one I could quick slot is Marked Bloom from its Awaken thing, but that is definitely not the only thing in its flow. Yeah, you've got Marked Bloom. The next skill that you want to be using is Luthegren's Call, which is a hold shift right and hold the right button to charge. When you release that, this skill is also a heal, and I decided to put a bleed on it to give it a few more hits after the fact, and gave it resource gen to make it so that it's a generator for health and resource, and has a little bit of a longer tick to prolong its generation of health and resource, even if it's by a tiny bit. The next skill you want to be utilizing is Mountain Breeze. That will jump you forward through the target, and it is a no collisions while moving, so if something's about to do a big hit, you can go and use that to go and dash through them, and that big hit will hit behind you. Pretty useful and very fun to use, but it does jump you very far forward, so kind of had to cancel that out by bringing the uproot into it, and that will kind of dash you back. And then that is followed by Radiant Explosion, which is a shift left, and then after the shift left, release your shift and click left twice to activate Light's Trail and Righteous Smite. It is a bit more complex than the other rotations that I've showed you on my other characters, but this rotation is very useful. You've got your Exhale, your Marked Bloom, your Luthegren's Call, forward F, shift F, shift left, left, and left. And what that looks like when it's actually done full rotation. And I messed that up greatly. It is a hard rotation to get down, so if you mess up a few times, it is more than understandable. But once it's down to muscle memory, it becomes a very potent thing. And that, sadly, the Exhale does leave a bit of cooldown to be wanted when you complete it. However, if you ignore the Exhale and just go into the Marked Bloom and start the flow from there, you can do the entire flow. But as for what that flow entails, your Exhale is the variable skill in your main kit. Highly, highly, highly recommend picking that up. It is too good of a utility. Choosing between a heal, a stun, and a all forms of speed reduction debuff on your target, all of those are very good things. You don't want to pass any of those up. So, it is a bit hard to choose, but depending on the situation and where you're grinding, it's a good thing. If you're somewhere you know you can handle, I recommend just going for the heal. If it's somewhere that the enemies hit hard and you're trying to evade as many of them as possible, I'd recommend taking the stun, because the stun, anything that's not hitting you, is less damage you're taking. And that deceleration, that movement speed and attack speed reduction, if you're about to fight a rift boss or something like that, slowing their attack speed will make it so that they hit you a lot less harder, because they hit you a lot less. And that's before you even get into the evasiveness of the skills you're using. And then that will be leading into your marked bloom. The targets that it hit have movement speed reduction on top of anything if you do the exhale movement reduction. And it does 11 hits to 10 targets. It knocks down in PvE. And where it's good in PvP is there is a transmog for characters that is basically a bush or a tree transmog, but it will hide their name, because in open world PvP, if you have that on, they can't see your name, and when you don't have it on, they can. If a enemy, if there is another player near you and its name is white, you are safe. They aren't negative in karma, but they might still jump you. There's still assholes that will do it and then kill enough that they're not in the red. But if their name is red, that is someone who kills other players just for the fun of it. So watch out for them. And if they're in a bush suit, you can't see if they're red or white. The marked bloom, you can shoot at them and that will tell you if they are, and also if it actually hits them without you triggering world PvP or flagging them to attack them. If you are able to hit them, it means they're a red player and they're more likely about to attack you. So it is a nice revealer for PvP. It's also a good control for PvE. Good skill. Then it's your Luthgren's Call. That is a very massive amount of hit skill. So if you utilize it without having it fully charged, you are doing 1500 damage times 5 hits to a max of 7 times to your target. If you look at the enemy down there, once it's released, it actually received 3 hits in that. So, it's really good. The knockback on it makes it so that they can take a few more hits, but where it becomes fun is when you let it fully charge, because rather than the 5 hits to a max of 7 targets, it turns into a 6 hits to a max of 9 targets. And it adds a little more damage. It's more meant to clear out a group of enemies, but it also gives you 50 HP per each of those hits that land, as well as forward guard. With it being an awakening state, it does have the cores. You can put the core for Luthgren's Call in, and that will give it forward guard over the course of the entire skill. So that entire time that it's charging up the arrow, before it even releases it, you can be getting forward guard, which is basically a block. So, you got a form of block right here that is followed up with a lot of damage and a lot of health gain. Very good skill. And then that goes into Mountain Breeze, which lets you dash through the target and then follow up with other skills. The Mountain Breeze will give you 3 hits to a maximum of 10 targets, gives you a little resource per each hit, but it also gives you invincible while you're moving forward and super armor on cast of skill and end of skill. And you have no collisions while the moving is happening. So basically, if you pop that as you're about to be hit by a mechanic from a world boss or something, that invincible kicks in while you're moving and you can cheese that mechanic. It is very cheap, but it is very efficient. And it lasts a pretty good duration too, because that entire time that you're moving forward, you're immune to whatever damage is being dealt. It's a very useful skill. Don't pass it up. but due to the fact that it moves you that far forward, it's probably going to disengage you from your target. The following skills are to get you back into it. You follow that up with uproot, and that will give you floating on your target if there's something still there. It does have a bit of a cleave to behind you. It's like this far behind you, it's not that far, but anything that is right there immediately behind you and in melee distance is going to be floated as well as what's ever in front of you. But that will put you having floating, and then you'll jump over the guys that you just knocked into the air, and then you're out of the group. And then that is followed with radiant explosion, so you're back in the ranged area, and that does 8 hits to 10 targets and take away their DP, and that will jump you back. And with that, if you release shift and click left 2 more times, you will get Light's Trail, which does radiant explosions damage times 6 to 10 targets. So basically, it will be doing the damage of your radiant explosion 6 times, and then it will give you resource per hit for each of those 6 hits to a maximum of 10 targets. Stiffness on hits, so you got your floating right here. You jump out of the way, get DP decrease on them, and bound them while they're floating. And then you got stiffness right here to prolong both of the effects of bound and floating. Because floating does inevitably fall into knockdown, because when they fall down, they're in knockdown. So floating is very useful for PvP. And then the stiffness just prolongs it, which makes it even better. And then that will be followed with Righteous Smite, which is the left again after you're done with Light's Trail. 2 skills in this rotation that will not be available every rotation is the Righteous Smite and the Exhale from your main kit. Those 2 are too long of cooldowns, but the Exhale will have like 2 seconds left on it when you finish a rotation, while Righteous Smite kinda has 8. Righteous Smite is a every other rotation skill, while the Exhale is almost every rotation. It will end up being every other just because of its cooldown if you want to keep the flow going. Or you can throw it in the middle of one of your skills, but it's going to mess up flow, so I recommend just having Exhale and Righteous Smite every other rotation. But yeah, that is the rotation. It is a bit harder to use than your average one. But Exhale, Marked Bloom, Luthagrin's Call, forward F, back F, shift left, and of course it was Black Spirits again. Fuck. So, Exhale, Marked Bloom, Luthagrin's, forward F, back F, shift left, left, left. And then just start with the Marked Bloom again, Luthagrin's, back F. Go forward F, back F, shift left, and then click left again. And you don't need to click it again afterwards because your what the crap is it called? Your Righteous Smite will not be available again after that. But it is a renewable flow except for Exhale and the Righteous Smite. Just only click left once after utilizing Radiant Explosion, and just skip the Exhale and go straight into Marked Bloom for your next rotation. Because with Marked Bloom, even if it does have a second left on cooldown, it doesn't matter. It's available during cooldown. It will be able to be used every time regardless, even if it doesn't apply its statuses. Now the Awakened versus the Succession, I feel like the Awakened has the superior skills compared to the Succession, but Succession does have some good utility skills. The Awakening has good sustain with Luthagrins and the good sustain from utilizing the Exhale. if you're taking the health regen from Exhale. So it's got 2 good heals, it's got a lot of maneuverability, has a few invulnerable status effects, and quite a bit of super armor. So it's far tankier than the succession skills. But yeah, that is my view on the Awakening. And the Awakening for the Archer is definitely enjoyable, but a little harder to use. Once it's down to muscle memory, it's a good kit to use, efficient, will clear out an entire room within moments, and it will heal you for a lot when you use your Luthigrins in a massive group of enemies. Because that Luthigrins there is only hitting 4 targets. That thing can hit up to 10 targets almost 30 times each for 50 HP per hit. It is a HP refill on each use. But yeah, that is Willis's World out on the Awakening. Good kit, lots of fun. And I clicked the wrong keybind.